Please welcome to the stage, Linda Cohen.
I know I'm not the only one who has had this inspiration happen in the middle of the night, right? You have an inspiration, only to wake up the next morning and you can't remember what it was. What if that inspiration could change your life and maybe impact a few other people along the way? In 2006, my phone rang. It was my father. He said, "Linda, I've just come from the doctor, and I've gotten very difficult news. I have lung cancer, and it's terminal. I have less than a year." When I got that call, I was 38. I was married. I had my own 2 small children. My father had just turned 70. But in my father's eyes, I still felt like I was 16. And I knew if anything was going to happen before it was too late, I had to do something. So the next week, I was on an airplane from Portland, Oregon, where I lived, to Burlington, Vermont, where my father resided. That weekend was magical. We watched old Woody Allen movies, we ate spicy Chinese food, we laughed, and we cried. But most importantly, we looked at each other and we said, "I'm sorry. Can you forgive me?" And the next 8 months of my father's life were an unbelievable gift. I don't know if any of you have a relative in a different time zone. I had often struggled to find time to call my dad. I would think about it after the kids were in bed and I had cleaned up from dinner and it would be too late. And those 8 months, I found time to call my father practically every single day. And one of those days, I remember he said, "Linda, why did we wait until I was dying to mend our relationship?" When my father passed away December 1st, 2006, which coincidentally was my son Solomon's 6th birthday, we had found peace. 5 weeks after my father's death, I woke up in the middle of the night with an inspiration. I woke my husband Aaron up. I said, "Honey, I want to do something to honor my father. I want to perform 1,000 mitzvahs in his memory." Now, some of you may have never heard this word. A mitzvah in Judaism is actually a good deed, an act of kindness. And my husband, thankfully, he is the computer guy. He's the literal one. He says, "Linda, it sounds like a lovely project. How are you going to know you've done 1,000 of anything?" He said, "Let me help you start a blog." So in January of 2007, I launched my blog, 1,000 Mitzvahs. And I started tracking these little actions. Now, I've met some of you. Maybe you've picked up my vibe. I am an East Coast person. I am a type A. I thought I can do this project in a year or less. And at 1 year in, I was only at 500. And you know you're getting older when suddenly your doctor, your dentist, your rabbi, as I have, or maybe priest, clergy, somebody else says, "Linda, my young rabbi came to me and he said, 'Linda, I think you should write a book about this project. It's already started to change your life.'" And young Brad, 10 years younger, I said I'd never written a book, but I took that idea to a writer's conference. And my first book was published in 2011, 1,000 Mitzvahs, How Small Acts of Kindness Can Heal, Inspire, and Change Your Life. I recorded a TED Talk in that winter, and I began talking about this idea of mitzvahs and kindness. And I knew that in about 2014, where I was sharing this with churches and businesses and organizations and a lot of schools, I wanted to take this message of kindness to corporate. I knew that businesses and organizations that were looking at kindness in a new way, they were making a difference. They stood out in the organizations that I was looking at. So I started speaking about the economy of kindness, how kindness transforms your bottom line. And I began working with organizations and businesses. I speak a lot in senior living. I have loved being here. Your energy is palpable. It has been so exciting. And the colors in here have been magical as well. So I began speaking to businesses and organizations, and my COVID silver lining was having time to write book number 2, The Economy of Kindness, How Kindness Transforms Your Bottom Line. If you didn't get your copy, there are still some copies over at the booth, Culture of Appreciation. Feel free to pick up a few more that are left over there. So when I was preparing to speak with this group, I had the opportunity to talk to some of your leaders. And some of your leaders said, you know what, Linda? We already have a baseline of kindness here at HumanGood. We already have that. In fact, if somebody came to work in our organization, they may not like it if they weren't a kind person, because that's what we expect. Not every company is like that. Not every company has that embed culture of kindness. So I wonder if HumanGood might want to consider how could you elevate or amplify what you are doing already and well out there, outside of the walls that you are in the community. So people often ask about the economic value of kindness. You might even be thinking that yourself. You say, what is the economic value of kindness? And for me, I decided it was being able to have a reputation that was out in the world. People know about the work you do. They know about what kind of an organization you have. And by the way, your reputation is kind of why I'm here today. So in January of 2022, my husband and I were new empty nesters, and we decided Portland winters weren't exactly our favorite, so we started coming to Southern California. And January 1st, 2022, I was checking something off my bucket list. Guess where we were on January 1st, 2022? We were in Pasadena, California, because I grew up in Vermont, and I used to see on my little 21-inch color television palm trees and sunshine. So we were at the Rose Bowl parade that year, and it was glorious. It was definitely better than it is on television. But driving home on the Ventura Freeway, I see a sign that says HumanGood. And I say, oh my gosh, Erin, write that down. I gotta look up that company. I gotta know who is HumanGood and what are they doing. And a few weeks later, I was on a webinar with Pioneer Network, getting interviewed by Penny Cook, and there on one of the little Zoom screens was Russ Mast, and it said HumanGood under his name. So I reached out to him and connected, and he consequently introduced me to Lisa Holland. And last winter, I got to meet Lisa Holland and Andrew Smith and be at one of your communities, Royal Oak, and that was when we started the conversation. So your reputation precedes you, right? Other people are gonna wanna know what is HumanGood and what are you doing in this organization? So reputation. Obviously, if I ask you if you've heard about a company or a business or organization that hasn't behaved with the highest culture of kindness, and I'm sure you could think of one, I'm sure you've read about them, you would know that that definitely could impact your bottom line, right? So second, are you able to recruit great talent? If your reputation is that you are a great place to work, it will be easier for you to recruit great talent. I don't know if I have any shoe shoppers in this audience. Anybody shop at Zappos, a shoe company online who, before the pandemic, could boast that it could take 6 or 7 years to get a job at Zappos because people so wanted to work with them. They have wow customer service. They were teaching companies all around the world about their customer service, and people were waiting to work at that organization because it had such a great reputation. So fine, can you recruit great talent? Now, when they're working for you, are you going to be able to retain the great talent? That would be my third economic value of kindness, because if your organization is a wonderful place to work, you are going to be able to keep and retain that talent. And I've heard about the longevity here and how many of you have been working at HumanGood and previously to the name change, the organizations before that, 4 decades. 4 decades. So you already are kind of living into some of those things. Oh, by the way, I'll grab my Ben & Jerry's water bottle. Do you know what today is, by the way? Free ice cream cones. Ben & Jerry's. I'm from Vermont, okay, so we know. Free ice cream cones today. Free ice cream cones, they've been doing this for 40 years, since the very first location, which was in a little gas station in Burlington, Vermont, that I got to go to. Free ice cream cones. In 2015, they gave away 1 million free ice cream cones, right? So their reputation is out there. People know about them, and they've continued to do appreciation. Because my fourth, R, if we're going to put these in R's, is recognition. Recognition of my staff, of my people, of my clients. So let me take a sip of water. 3 R's. So baseline of kindness. If you already have a baseline of kindness, which I can see that being here with all of you. If you already have a baseline of kindness, then you won't mind that I'm going to offer a 5-question culture of kindness quiz. I just want you to take the temperature. I want you to see, how do we think we're doing in our community? How do we think we're doing? So I'm going to put up one at a time a question for you just to ponder. Just to ponder, how are we doing in our own culture, in our community? So we're going to start with the first question in our Culture of Kindness quiz. Oh, I'm in front of it. There we go. No wonder I can't see it. Okay, I'll move out of the way. Just ponder. How are you doing? Let's go on to the second question. I don't have a clicker. There we go. Second question, Culture of Kindness quiz. Third question. Let's go on. Fourth question. Can you see? I don't know where to stand when something's behind me. Let's go to our final question, number 5. Thank you for showing the quiz. Is your head spinning a little bit? Are you thinking about how you're doing? Maybe you think I'm being a little provocative with some of my questions. I want them to make you think. How are we doing currently, and what's possible? I'd love to show my next slide, but let me just tell this little thing. During the pandemic, a lot of my work went virtual. Obviously, I didn't get the pleasure of being close up and with people, and so I had to find a way to connect with people virtually. So when I talked to audiences, about 1,000 people took an anonymous Mentimeter QR code like you did today, and they shared with me, how could we be kind to you? This was in all industries, senior living and a variety of other industries, healthcare, financial, and I asked them, how can we be kind to you, expecting it was going to be about money and PTO. I thought that would be the answer. If we can share the final slide that I have up, this is what I found when I asked anonymously, how can we be kind to you? You see what the first couple are? Words of appreciation. Check on me and smile. I was shocked that that's what came out of my question. How can we be kind to you? So it doesn't have to cost a lot. Somebody on our panel this morning said exactly those words. It doesn't have to cost a lot. When we consider a culture of kindness, words of appreciation and thank you can make such a big difference in your bottom line and in your ability as a company to exude that. So what if HumanGood was a role model? Not only in senior living, I want you to be a role model in society. When I had our call ahead of time with John and Lisa, John said, you are a living laboratory of healthy and successful communities. A living laboratory of healthy and successful communities. You have people from all countries, all age groups, a variety of people working and living together in the same kind of a space in community. Could you be an example for others? Could you be a role model if you went outside of all the things you're doing well in the communities? You could. I know you could. And so with this what if possibility question, I want to encourage you to consider that. I saw that US News, already you got some wonderful 13 of your communities got honored this year with Best Nursing Home. So you're already, of course, for years, for 125 plus years, getting these notifications. How can we elevate that and amplify it? I want to throw that question out to you to consider as you go through the rest of your time and conversation. Now, there's no silver bullet to creating a culture of kindness. If you have a name like HumanGood, it's going to be an aspiration. We are working always to be better, to live up to our name, to be exactly what we know is possible. And it's always something we're working towards. So in the years I've been speaking about kindness, I'll tell you I've noticed a few things. A few observations both about companies that are embracing this and personally, what it means to live into kindness. For companies, I have noticed that some companies that really lean into this idea of a culture of kindness, they do a couple of things really well. Number one, they do active listening. And I know listening came up earlier in this conversation earlier today as well. Active listening means two-way. It means we're making sure the people are at the table who we want to hear from. It's not being decided in a boardroom with a select group of people. It is happening with everyone at the conversation. It's active, it's two ways. During COVID, I heard from employees who said when my manager or my boss or my executive director let me tell them what I thought we could do and then we did it, it made such a difference for me as a team member. So having those conversations, actively listening, finding ways that you can do that is one of the things I've noticed companies do well. Secondly, candid feedback. It's not always easy to give feedback, and you even mentioned it earlier, there's going to be difficult conversations in the next 75 years. And that's okay. It's okay to have difficult conversations if you are doing it with heart, if you are doing it with empathy and grace and kindness, and you are saying, I think we could do something better, I think you could do something better, it helps you get better. Right? You lean into that, and then you are able to do something better. And as a human, when I get that kind of candid feedback, I might be able to grow and be a better leader and a better manager and a better person just in general, if I get that candid feedback and I'm open to it. Finally, being intentional. Businesses and organizations that are doing this with intentionality, I think they do it better. We're looking for ways to elevate kindness. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I started this work, people sort of said, who's going to want to talk about kindness? This was in the early, 2010, 13, 14, and I did not know. But I felt so in my, I want to say the word kishkas, that's a Yiddish word, so I won't use that one, but in my gut that this was the path I was supposed to take. I've always thought this was my father leaning into me. Being intentional means I don't know who's going to want to talk about this, but I'm so glad I didn't quit. Because here I am in 2024, and lots of people are talking about kindness and culture and leadership, and how can we do that with the biggest empathy possible. It's not easy. It's a practice. But when people are intentional about it, you're forward focusing. And that has been so exciting to be with all of you this last day, hearing what you're talking about in this what if mindset. And along that, I'll also add, expect the best from your people. And I love the programs you're running where you are helping people elevate themselves. That is how you're going to give back to your own communities, by helping your own people elevate. So let's talk about kindness personally. Kindness on a personal level. I noticed some things right away. The size didn't matter, right? I thought it had to be huge. X Prize is doing huge things in the world. I thought, if I'm not doing all these big things, does it matter? Does smiling count? I remember thinking about that at the beginning. Does letting someone in traffic count? I grew up in New England. I learned how to drive where we honk at people. And then I moved out to the West Coast where we're a little better. So does it matter? What about replacing a roll of toilet paper? Does that count as an act of kindness? This is one of my mitzvahs. It is in the first book. But it's also been an opportunity just to share that it could be something small. I was at a grocery store early on in my mitzvah project. I have a basket for our family of 4 filled to the brim. And I look behind me and there's an older gentleman. He just has his carton of eggs and his half a gallon of milk. And so I say to him what any of you would say, sir, do you want to go in front of me? He walks to the checkout clerk and he says, "Do you see what she just did for me? That's the nicest thing that's happened to me today." And I hear him say that, and all I can think is, what kind of a day was he having? What kind of a day was he having if that action that any of us would do was the nicest thing that happened to him today? So I'm going to remind you, in your communities, at your grocery stores, at your pharmacy, wherever you go, every single person you meet right now is possibly struggling. It's been a hard 4 years for the world, and people are struggling. So that little act of kindness that you do, don't underestimate it. Don't ever diminish it. Do it anyway, because it could be the nicest thing that's happened for someone today. I also discovered there's a ripple effect of kindness. A ripple effect. How many of you have seen a story in the news, the one good news story that they tell after 17 bad news stories, right? You hear this story or you see it on social media and either you share it with other people you know, or you think, that restores my faith in humanity. So the ripple effect, you have one, certainly with the work you're doing, and you may be lucky enough to hear about how it's impacted someone else, a resident, their family, the community that they're in. You may never hear. You may never hear, but trust me, this has been so beautiful in the work that I've gotten to do for all these years that I've heard these stories. In fact, many of them I did put into my second book, the ripple that happens. When my kids were young, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom. And so I volunteered a lot in our elementary school, and we had a beloved 5th grade teacher, Mr. Lenhart. And one day I was in the office doing some volunteer work, and Mr. Lenhart walks in, and he's holding a note in his hand. And he's sobbing. And I say, "Mr. Lenhart, what's going on?" And he said, "I just got this note from one of my students. She was actually in my 5th grade classroom more than 20 years ago. She's thanking me. She said when she was in 5th grade, her parents were getting divorced, and I was the only steady adult in her life that year." He was just doing his job. So whether or not you get to hear about the ripple effect, I promise you those small acts of kindness have a ripple effect. So the final lesson that I've gleaned in these years of kindness work is giving and receiving are different, and one is harder than the other. So raise your hands if it's really easy for you to be the giver of kindness. You see a need, you fill a need. I expected kind of all your hands up. Keep your hands up if it's just as easy for you to receive kindness from someone else. Oh, actually a few more hands up than normal. I discovered that we really struggle with this idea. Most people find it very easy to be givers of kindness, and I have found that in every audience in a variety of different industries, kind of doesn't matter. But certainly in senior living and in healthcare, I find a lot of people really easy for you to be the giver. But receiving kindness is so much harder, because we're not taught that. We're actually told giving is better than receiving, right? Or you can do it on your own. We were kind of brought up in this culture where we do everything independently. And really, we don't. We do nothing independently. We are all about community. We are all interconnected. And I learned this lesson personally about giving kindness and receiving kindness the summer of 2014. My mom was larger than life. She was a glass ceiling breaker. She was the first radio talk show host in the 1970s in the Boston area on WEEI. I was a little girl at that time. But she also struggled with mental illness. And in the summer of 2014, she ended her own life. And I was the recipient of so much kindness. People came to our house, they came to visit us, they made our family meals. I got cards and texts and notes. And there was discomfort in the receiving of so much loving kindness that I had to think about, why am I feeling so impacted by this? I know people want to give. So I had to sit in the discomfort and learn how to receive it. I have a little idea for you, because if some of you have not been in that season where you have been the recipient of kindness, although I suspect many of you have, if you've had a loss or a divorce or a job change or a parent that you've lost, you've been in the season and you have received kindness from other people. And maybe it's even what has buoyed you through that season. And if you have been lucky enough to arrive at this time without having hit that season, human life will show that you will eventually get there. So I want to give you a tip about how to be better recipients of kindness. Here it is. The next time you get a compliment, and by the way, loving the colors in the room. I got my green friends here and other people wearing orange and pink, and I did get a few compliments today. The next time you get a compliment, I want you to say, thank you. That's it. Thank you. And practice receiving that kindness that someone else just gave to you, because that will be a way, when you practice it, when it's easy like that, you'll be able to receive when it's a little harder. But you saw everybody with their hands up. The only way we can be really good recipients of kindness is when we are graceful, and practice that. So that's my little way for you to encourage how you can be a better recipient of kindness. So what if you had an inspiration in the middle of the night, like I did? And what if that inspiration could change your life and maybe impact a few other people along the way? I've thought about that in preparing for this what if incredible conversation, because I've thought about what if I didn't wake up in the middle of the night with my crazy epiphany idea and share it with my husband and start into this road. I would never even be meeting the amazing people and doing the work that I'm doing. And it has been a joy to step into this work, to be able to be the kindness catalyst and share this idea that kindness is happening all the time, everywhere, right now, at this very minute. It's just not what we're amplifying. My theme this year was Amplify Kindness. And it has been so amazing to be able to know partners are showing up, the people I want to partner with. I am trying to bring this to you in a joyful, fun way. I've created ways we can bring kindness out. Bingo, kindness bingo, bite-sized kindness, you know. How can we have these conversations in a fun way, in a joyful way, that will help elevate and amplify this idea of kindness? I want to end with one final story. After my first book came out, I was invited to speak on a Oregon public broadcasting show called Think Out Loud. And I did my interview, and I got a call a few months later from Mrs. Burbank. And Mrs. Burbank, she said, Linda, I am a 4th and 5th grade teacher here in McMinnville, Oregon, and I was so inspired by the work that you did, by the project you took on and the book you wrote to honor your father, and it inspired me as a teacher. My 4th and 5th grade teachers, we've made our own Everyday Acts of Kindness book, and we modeled it on your book. And I'm wondering, Linda, would you come out here and speak to our students? And I looked at the schedule. It was close to the end of the year, and at the time I was on the PTO and had lots of end of the year things, but I thought, yes, of course I'll come. But I do remember the morning of the talk, and I hesitate to say this in California, but I thought, wow, from Beaverton to McMinnville, it's an hour drive each way. I sure hope it's worth it. So I get to the classroom the morning of the talk, and the students, they're on the edge of their seats. Oh, Mrs. Cohen, who was your inspiration to be a writer? Oh, Mrs. Cohen, was your mom a writer too? Oh, Mrs. Cohen, you know what? Someday when I grow up, I want to be a writer. And I got to the car at the end of the day with my little carton of Oregon strawberries and my little hand-tied bouquet of flowers. And I thought, was it worth it? Yes. Thank you. I had no idea. Oh, sorry. I was thanking a higher power. I had no idea when I stepped into this work that it would lead me on this journey. So it's been incredible to be able to spend time with you thinking about this what-if possibility. So I ask all of you, what if HumanGood could be a role model, not only for your communities, but for our bigger world? If not now, when? What's next?